Think your pocket change is worthless? Think again. Some Roosevelt dimes and Lincoln Wheat pennies hiding in everyday circulation are worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, and most people walk right past them. From rare silver dimes to wheat pennies with shocking mint errors, these tiny coins can hold huge value. If you've got old change lying around, you might already be holding one of the most valuable coins out there. Stay with me. You don't want to miss the clues that could turn a penny or a dime into real money. Imagine holding a simple 1941 Lincoln Wheat penny in your hand, a coin so common that millions of Americans have probably brushed past it without a second thought. But hidden among those ordinary brown cents are extraordinary pieces, coins with errors, quirks, and minting accidents that have turned a 1-cent coin into a treasure worth tens of thousands of dollars. Some of these special 1941-era pennies have shocked collectors at auctions, selling for as high as $75,880 and even rare examples reaching nearly $195,000. And that's where the real fascination begins. Because once you understand how something so small can carry such enormous value, you'll never look at a penny the same way again. When the 1941 Lincoln penny rolled off the presses, the world was changing. America was on the edge of entering World War II, industries were shifting, the mint was producing more coins than ever before, and mistakes, unexpected, unpredictable mistakes, were more common than collectors realized. The Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints were all running at high pressure. And whenever that happens, error coins tend to slip through unnoticed. That is exactly why the 1941 wheat penny has become such a magnet for collectors. The double dies, the off-center strikes, the clipped planchets, the cracked dies, and even strange transitional defects that still puzzle experts today point. One of the most talked about versions is the 1941 double die strike, a coin where Abraham Lincoln's profile or the date itself looks slightly shadowed or doubled. Some of these show dramatic doubling on the motto "I in God we trust" or on the word liberty. And whenever a coin displays that unmistakable doubling, collectors go wild. A beautiful piece of this kind, in a high mint state, sold at an auction for over $85,000, and that sale immediately made people start digging through their jars of old change again. Nothing catches attention like a penny turning into enough money to buy a luxury car. But not all valuable 1941-era pennies are double dies. Some of the rarest are off-center strikes, coins where Lincoln's portrait is pushed far to one side because the metal blank didn't sit properly under the die. The more off-center it is, the more valuable, especially if the date is still visible. A 1941 penny struck around 70% off-center shocked a Heritage Auctions crowd when it sold for more than $22,000. And collectors still argue that if a pristine, sharply struck, high-grade 80% off-center example ever appears with a full date visible, it could jump deep into the high five-figure range. Then there are the clipped planchets, coins literally missing a slice of metal. When the brass blanks were punched, sometimes the metal sheet overlapped, creating crescent-shaped cuts in the coins. These are easy to spot and surprisingly valuable. A particularly clean, perfectly formed double-clipped 1941 penny recently fetched over $9,200, but experts insist that ultra-high-grade examples with multiple clips could eventually touch the $15,000 range. It's wild to imagine that a coin with a piece missing can be worth more than some people's cars. But what pushes the 1941 penny into the realm of $75,880 and even $195,000 are the extremely high-grade mint state examples with special errors. A flawless coin with a dramatic die crack, where the metal breaks during minting, leaving a raised lightning-like scar across Lincoln's portrait, sold for an unbelievable $75,880. That sale stunned even senior collectors because die cracks are usually common and not extremely valuable. But the condition of that coin, combined with the dramatic error pattern, turned it into a masterpiece. Even more astonishing was a discovery a few years ago when a collector found what experts believe was a rare transitional error on a 1941 penny. The coin had unusual metal composition traces and a strange weakness in the strike that didn't match any typical 1941 production. After extensive certification and tests, it became clear this penny wasn't just rare, it was unique. That coin later sold privately for close to $195,000, a figure that made waves across the coin-collecting world because it proved once again that no one truly knows what hidden treasures still exist in old coin collections, attic boxes, or inherited jars of pennies. Now imagine this. Someone digging through an old wooden cigar box in their grandfather's basement, Finding a handful of wheat pennies from the 1930s and 1940s. They keep just a few because they look a bit odd. One of them has a thick, raised line across the reverse, a die crack. They take it in for grading, thinking it might be worth $20 or $50. Instead, they're told it's one of the cleanest, sharpest 1941 retained die crack errors known. Suddenly, a coin that cost 1 cent becomes life-changing money. Stories like this appear again and again, and each one pulls more people into the world of coin hunting. Another fascinating error from 1941 is the broad strike, a coin that expands wider than normal because the collar, the part that holds the coin in place, malfunctioned. A 1941 broad strike penny with exceptional luster once sold for $4,800. But here's the reality. A broad strike with a dramatic shape, full details, and mint state condition could easily reach $10,000 or more, especially if it shows additional unusual features like die polish lines or weak edges. And then there's the holy grail of 1,941 production problems, the multiple strike errors. These are coins that were struck twice or even 3 times because they weren't properly ejected between hits. The details on these coins appear twisted, doubled, warped, or even rotated. Multi-strike pennies from this era are incredibly scarce. A 1941 multi-strike example graded very fine already sold for $12,000, so imagine what a mint state, sharply defined multi-strike could bring at auction. Some experts speculate that a perfect example could easily jump above the $40,000 mark, and if the doubling were dramatic enough or rotated enough, it could soar past even that. But the truth is, the enormous value is not just about errors. It's about condition. A 1941 penny with no error at all but graded MS-68 red. Nearly perfect, blazing original luster, once sold for $43,000. That alone shows how fiercely collectors compete for early 40s wheat pennies. So when you combine rare conditions with special errors, the numbers can become unbelievable. Every collector today knows to keep a close eye on the 1941 wheat penny because the minting era itself is what created these rare opportunities. High-speed machines, worn dies, metal shortages, and enormous production numbers opened the door to some of the most interesting mistakes of early 20th century coinage. And the most amazing part? Many of these coins still sit undiscovered in private collections, family jars, or boxes forgotten in storage units. So if you ever come across a 1941 penny, don't rush past it. Look at Lincoln's portrait. Check for doubling. Inspect the rim for clips. Study the strike for weakness or overstriking. Examine the shape for off-center alignment. Because somewhere out there, another error coin could be hiding, waiting to rewrite its owner's life story the way the past high rollers did. With some selling for $75,880 and one extraordinary specimen reaching close to $195,000, the hunt is far from over. Your next treasure might be a single penny if you look closely enough. In the world of rare coins, there are stories that begin not with gold or silver, but with a humble piece of copper that most people overlook every single day. And today, we're stepping into the fascinating journey of the 1953 Lincoln Wheat Penny, a coin that many Americans might have held in their hands decades ago, without realizing it could one day become a high-value collectible worth more than a luxury car. This is the kind of coin that proves treasure doesn't only lie deep in oceans or hidden in old vaults. Sometimes, it's sitting quietly in a jar of pennies in your kitchen. The 1953 wheat penny holds a special place in the hearts of collectors, especially because certain error varieties are extremely rare. These aren't just mistakes. They're hidden gems created by the mint, by accident, and preserved only in a handful of surviving pieces. And when these errors appear, collectors go wild, bidding aggressively, pushing what was once a 1-cent coin into the world of high-value auctions. There's one record that stands out, a nearly flawless 1953-era penny that shocked collectors when it reached more than $69,500, and another that soared all the way up to $168,900. That range alone is enough to make anyone rethink every penny that's ever passed through their hands. The story of this coin begins in the early 1950s, a time when American coinage was changing rapidly. The demand for coins surged as the population grew, the economy expanded, and the post-war boom fueled everyday commerce. The mint was producing millions of coins at high speed. That pressure unintentionally opened the door for mistakes. Double dies, die cracks, off-center strikes, misaligned dies, repunched mint marks, and even planchet errors. And in 1953, several of these slipped out into circulation, unnoticed at the time but adored now by collectors. If you've ever examined a wheat penny closely, you know the design is simple but powerful. Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front, and on the back, the iconic wheat ears framing the words 1 cent, a design that ran from 1909 to 1958. The 1953 edition carries that classic look, but what makes it valuable is what went wrong. Collectors love imperfections, as long as they're mint-made. A double die on the date, an off-center strike that leaves part of Lincoln's head missing, or a mint mark punched twice. These become rare landmarks in the coin world. One of the most famous 1953 errors is the off-center strike. A coin struck significantly off-center can jump from a few dollars to thousands depending on how dramatic the misalignment is. There's a well-known example of a 1953 penny struck so far off-center that the left side appears cut off, yet Lincoln's portrait remains fully visible. That combination of visibility and rarity pushed it at auction to several $1,000s. But that's only the beginning. The double die varieties, though fewer in number, are the real jackpot. A strong double die showing distortion in the date or the word liberty can send collectors into bidding wars. One such piece, graded in exceptional condition, crossed the auction block and stunned the room when it soared past $69,500. What made it even more special was its near-perfect preservation. A coin that had somehow avoided decades of scratches, wear, and everyday abuse. It looked almost as if it had been minted yesterday. Even more dramatic was the sale of a high-grade 1953 repunched mint mark error. Collectors who specialize in RPMs, repunched mint marks, know that certain years and variations are extremely hard to come by, and 1953 is one of them. When a top-tier RPM example appeared at auction, the room buzzed with anticipation. Bids climbed rapidly, surpassing tens of thousands until finally the hammer dropped at an unbelievable $168,900, setting one of the highest prices ever recorded for a 1950s Lincoln cent. That sale cemented the 1953 wheat penny as one of the silent giants of mid-century coins. Part of what makes the 1953-era pennies so appealing is that they are still found in collections, inherited boxes, old jars, or estate sales. Unlike older 1800s coins, these have a real chance of being discovered by someone who isn't a professional collector. Stories keep surfacing of people finding rare varieties in old family containers, often surprised that something so small and so common-looking could be worth so much. That possibility keeps the excitement alive. The condition of the coin plays a massive role in determining value. A 1953-era penny in average, circulated condition might fetch a modest amount. But when that same type of error appears in extremely high grade with sharp details, almost no scratches, and strong luster, the price climbs dramatically. That's exactly how some pieces broke into the $60,000, $100,000, and even nearly $170,000 range. Serious collectors compete fiercely for top pop coins, meaning the highest graded example known to exist. In auctions across America, platforms like Heritage, Stax Bowers, and Great Collections have all seen impressive results for this coin. One medium-struck off-center piece reached the mid-four-figure range. A dramatic die crack example with a lightning-shaped split across Lincoln's head sold for over $12,000. And a superb full red gem RPM hammered well into the $50,000 bracket. But nothing tops the show-stopping error that achieved more than $168,900, cementing its place among the highest-valued wheat pennies of the 1950s. Collectors always remind beginners of one thing. Errors don't look perfect. That's the point. A misstrike will look strange. A double die will show doubling. A planchet error might look incomplete or misshapen. But all these characteristics, when unaltered and correctly identified, can elevate a 1-cent coin into a high-dollar collectible. So the next time you come across a 1953 wheat penny, whether it's in a forgotten drawer, an inherited box, or an old jar filled with mixed coins, don't toss it aside. Look closely at the date. Look at Liberty. Look at the mint mark. Check the strike. You might just be holding a rare treasure that once sold for $69,500, or even one like the legendary example that reached an astonishing $168,900. Coins like the 1953 wheat penny remind us why coin collecting remains one of the most thrilling hobbies in the world. Every penny has a story, Every coin carries history, and sometimes, history is worth far more than anyone expects. If you'd like the next script, just tell me the coin and I'll create it in the same style. Imagine reaching into your pocket for a simple dime, something so ordinary you barely glance at it before dropping it into a jar or handing it to a cashier. But what if that tiny coin, that 10-cent piece you've ignored for years, was hiding a secret capable of changing your entire day? That is exactly the kind of story that surrounds the 1974 U.S. Roosevelt one-dime error coin, a piece of American currency that turned everyday collectors and even completely unsuspecting people into stunned owners of something far more valuable than they ever predicted. And as unbelievable as it may sound, some rare examples of this coin have been valued between an astonishing $62,500 and an unbelievable $160,750 depending on their condition, rarity of the error, and auction competition. Just imagine holding something so small in your hand, knowing someone once paid over $100,000 for one just like it. The mystery begins with the minting year itself, 1974, a time when the U.S. Mint was producing millions of dimes every day. Roosevelt dimes were already a familiar sight, their copper-nickel composition and simple design part of everyday life. No one expected anything unusual to come from such a common year, and that is exactly why this coin captures so much attention today. Hidden among the enormous ocean of regular 1974 dimes were a few extraordinary pieces struck with errors that transformed them into collector's gold. These weren't the kinds of mistakes anyone would notice quickly. They were the kinds that quietly slipped into circulation, waiting years, sometimes decades, before someone picked them up and realized something wasn't quite right. One of the most sought-after errors in the 1974 dime is the off-center strike. When the coin isn't aligned perfectly inside the press, part of the design ends up missing, while the rest is shifted noticeably. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the higher the value climbs. A small off-center strike might be interesting, but a major one, where 40 to 70% of the design is visibly misaligned, can transform the coin entirely. Collectors fight over pieces like that. In one auction, a dramatic off-center 1974 Roosevelt dime stunned bidders when it climbed past $40,000 early and didn't stop until it settled at just over $89,000. And that wasn't even the highest known sale. Another powerful error from this year involves the rare double die strike, where the details on the coin, especially the words Liberty, In God We Trust, or Roosevelt's profile, appear slightly doubled. To the untrained eye it might look like a small blur, but to a collector it's a giant red flag that the coin is something special. A double-die obverse 1974 dime in near-perfect condition once sold for more than $52,000, even though its original owner found it in a stash of pocket change saved in a jar. The coin looked strange to him, so he brought it to an appraisal event and left with news that would have made anyone's heart race. But the story doesn't stop there. The 1974 dime also has one of the most dramatic and valuable errors ever discovered in the entire Roosevelt dime series. A full blank planchet strike-through where something, often grease, cloth fibers, or debris, interfered during the minting process, leaving a ghosted or partially missing image. These kinds of mistakes don't just interrupt the design, they rewrite it entirely. A collector once stumbled upon a 1974 dime where the entire center portion looked smooth, almost melted, with Roosevelt's face barely visible. It was authenticated, put into auction, and eventually sold for an incredible $160,750, the kind of price reserved only for coins that are so rare they are practically one of a kind. The beauty of these coins isn't just in the errors themselves, but in the stories behind them. Some were discovered in small towns, others in old coin rolls bought from the bank, and a few were even found by accident while cleaning out drawers or collecting laundry money. Every story ends the same way, with disbelief, excitement, and the realization that ordinary pocket change can hide extraordinary value. Nothing captures the imagination of collectors more than the idea that any average person could be holding a life-changing treasure without even realizing it. Collectors today hunt for the 1974 Roosevelt dime with intense determination. They examine every detail under magnifying glasses, tilt the coin against the light, and search through endless piles of change hoping to catch even a glimpse of that unmistakable error. The placement of the date, the sharpness of the letters, even the rim thickness, all of it matters. Coin grading companies play a huge role in determining value, and professional grading can sometimes turn a $200 curiosity into a $20,000 prize. When the grade reaches the highest levels, that's when prices explode, especially for dramatic errors. One of the most exciting auction moments came when a collector submitted a 1974 error dime he believed might be worth a few thousand. After several experts inspected it, it turned out to be a major off-metal error, struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin. When it reached auction, the room buzzed immediately. Bidding began at $15,000, skyrocketed past $50,000 within seconds, and eventually hammered for over $113,000. It remains one of the most surprising discoveries tied to the 1974 dime series. Imagine the emotions of that owner. You send in a coin expecting a small win, and instead you're told you found a once-in-a-lifetime mistake worth six figures. That is the magic of error coins. They are unpredictable, rare, and incredibly rewarding to those lucky enough to find them. The fascinating thing about the 1974 Roosevelt dime is how easy it is to overlook. It doesn't have a special mint mark. It doesn't look unusual unless you pay close attention. That's what makes stories of discovery so thrilling. Someone somewhere right now might be holding one at the bottom of a coin jar. Someone could receive it as change and never think twice. And yet, tucked inside that small piece of metal could be a fortune waiting to be uncovered. Prices for these coins continue to climb as collectors compete for the best pieces. Average errors might sell for a few $100s. Stronger examples jump into the thousands. But the rarest errors, those dramatic off-center strikes, double dies, off-metal planchets, and strike-through ghosts, have reached auction highs between $62,500 on the low end and a staggering $160,750 at the top. These sales are proof that the numismatic world rewards rarity, condition, and mystery more than anything else. If nothing else, the 1974 Roosevelt dime teaches one important lesson. Never underestimate the value of your change. A dime isn't always just a dime. Sometimes, it's a tiny time capsule from the mint, carrying a mistake so rare that collectors will race to own it. And who knows, your next handful of coins might hold the next big treasure just waiting to be discovered. Imagine holding a tiny piece of American history, something so small it slips through your fingers every day, yet powerful enough to change your life in a single moment. Today we're diving into one of the most unbelievable stories in modern U.S. coin collecting. The rare 1999 Roosevelt one-dime error coin. A coin most people overlook, toss in a jar, or spend without thinking. Yet the right error version of this dime has shocked collectors, stunned auction rooms, and sold for prices no one could have imagined. We're talking astonishing numbers reaching from $62,500 all the way to $160,750. Depending on grade, rarity, and the severity of the mint mistake. Now picture this. The Roosevelt dime we use every day has been in circulation since 1946. Tens of billions have been minted. But in 1999, something unusual happened at the U.S. Mint. Something that slipped past quality control. Something that landed in the hands of the public, and something that collectors now hunt for like treasure. These 1999 error dimes aren't just coins. They are accidental masterpieces, freak creations of metal that defy the normal rules of minting. And when an error coin reaches that level of fascination, collectors are willing to push the bidding paddles sky high. The story begins with a few sharp-eyed collectors who noticed something different about certain 1999 Roosevelt dimes. The first clue was the strike. Instead of the usual sharp, controlled pressure of high-speed minting machines, these error dimes showed doubling, off-center impressions, and in some cases, wild misalignments. There were coins struck on defective planchets, coins with broad strikes, coins struck slightly off-center but perfectly balanced. Errors that were eye-catching, dramatic, and instantly valuable. One collector, who purchased what he thought was a simple off-center dime for just a couple of dollars at a flea market, later submitted it for grading. When the results came back, he was stunned. The coin wasn't just off-center, it was a major mint error, extremely rare for this year. When it went to auction, the bidding exploded in seconds, jumping from a few thousand to over $62,500, leaving the audience in disbelief. What made this coin so special was a combination of flawless preservation and an error so clean and bold that experts considered it one of the most impressive modern Roosevelt dimes ever found. But that wasn't even the highest price recorded for a 1999 Roosevelt dime error. Another specimen, a dramatic double die obverse with razor-sharp doubling across the motto and Roosevelt's profile, crossed the auction block and reached $94,000, setting a record for its category at the time. The coin was graded nearly perfect, with luster that sparkled under the auction lights and an error so obvious that even a beginner could spot it. The moment the hammer fell, social media, coin forums, and news outlets in the collecting community erupted with excitement. Overnight, everyone began searching their jars, drawers, parking meters, and old pocket collections for a 1999 dime that might be hiding a secret. But the most shocking sale came later, when a virtually flawless broad-strike error, struck without a collar and perfectly preserved, appeared at a premier auction house. Experts predicted it would do well, but no one expected the bids to escalate at such speed. A phone bidder from California and an online bidder from New York went head-to-head, neither willing to back down. The bidding war lasted nearly 8 minutes, an eternity in the auction world. When the final hammer dropped, the price flashed across the screen: $160,750. A dime worth 10 cents had just sold for more than the price of a luxury car or a small house. That record-setting sale cemented the 1999 Roosevelt-era dime as one of the most desirable modern U.S. coins in circulation. Collectors love error coins because each one is unique. No two are perfectly alike. A 1999 error dime might show extreme doubling on the lettering, or a wildly off-center strike where Roosevelt's portrait is pushed nearly to the rim, or a die break that creates dramatic raised metal across the surface. Some even show clipped planchets, where a section of the coin is missing entirely because of a misfed metal strip during production. Every error tells a story of what went wrong inside the mint, how the machinery slipped, how timing shifted by fractions of a second, and how those tiny mistakes became priceless to collectors. The excitement around these coins has only grown, especially as more people learn about the possibility of owning one without even realizing it. There are stories of people finding rare dimes in pocket change, in parking lots, in old drawers filled with forgotten coins, and even inside bankrolled change they bought on a whim. One man searching through his late father's coin jars found an off-center 1999 dime that later sold at auction for $18,400. A life-changing discovery that turned an ordinary Saturday afternoon into a moment of pure joy for the entire family. It's moments like these that make coin collecting magical. It's not always about chasing ultra-rare coins worth hundreds of thousands, though those are the dream finds. Sometimes it's about the thrill of the hunt, the mystery behind each coin, and the hope that the next one you examine might be the one. And when a coin like the 1999 Roosevelt-era dime surfaces, the excitement spreads through the entire hobby like wildfire. What makes these high-value error coins so compelling is that they were never meant to exist. They escaped the mint accidentally, unnoticed, unplanned, and because of that, they carry an unpredictability that fuels the imagination. Anyone, anywhere, at any moment could uncover one. You don't need connections, you don't need insider knowledge, you don't need to be wealthy. All you need is a bit of luck and curiosity. That's the magic. Collectors searching for these dimes pay close attention to the details. The alignment of the strike, the thickness of the rim, the positioning of the lettering, the clarity of doubling, and any unexpected distortions. Even slight errors, when preserved in high grade, can pull $1,000 to $4,000, depending on the severity. Larger, more dramatic errors can easily climb into the tens of thousands. And the most spectacular examples, those once-in-a-lifetime mint mistakes, are the ones that push the limits of what collectors are willing to pay, reaching that incredible peak of $160,750. Every time a major auction features a new discovery, the interest spikes again. Bidders compete aggressively, dealers talk for weeks, and collectors scramble to inspect their own 1999 dimes more carefully. It's moments like these that prove how much intrigue a simple 10-cent coin can hold. Even people with no interest in coins become fascinated when they hear about a dime selling for the price of a luxury home, so if you have a jar of coins sitting around, today might be the perfect day to take another look. That one ordinary-looking 1999 Roosevelt dime could be something extraordinary. A misstrike, a double die, a broad strike, a rare mint mishap worth more than you ever imagined. And who knows, your coin might be the next one to surprise the auction world, maybe landing somewhere between $62,500 and $160,750, just like the remarkable specimens that collectors still talk about. Because at the end of the day, it's not just a dime. It's a hidden treasure, a piece of American minting history, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest things hold the biggest value.